I've been waiting probably about like 3 days now for the rain to stop so I could finally get outside to go and rescue our pepper babies. And it looks like today's gonna be the day. We got some blue skies out there. It doesn't look like it's gonna rain, so let's get out there and let's start saving the pepper babies. Hey folks, I'm Jordan from Mind and Soil, where we're looking to introduce 1 million individuals to gardening's mental health benefits. And if one of the reasons why you garden, why you love to get your hands dirty is because of how soothing it is, how calming, how restorative you can find it to be, then go ahead and subscribe. Every week we share new videos all around how to be getting your hands dirty and all kinds of free education like that. And so for today and for this week, what I want to be sharing is how to go about overwintering your pepper plants. And I'm going to take you through each step of the entire journey. And it really begins with the question, why would you go about doing this? And so pepper plants are actually perennials. And what I mean by that is that if they were in the ideal environment or conditions, they're going to continue to grow for more than 1 year. But what usually ends up happening is that we get to this time in the year, around October, and it gets a little bit too cold for those pepper plants to be staying alive. And so they ultimately die off. But if we were to dig them up, move them inside, put them into some new seedling mix and give them really good lighting, then they're going to survive all through the winter, and we can put them back into the garden in the springtime as a really big and beautiful plant, opposed to just a really small early on seedling. So where I want to get started is by popping that mini greenhouse off of the pepper plants I have underneath there, which is going to be a little bit challenging, and then we're going to dig up Henry the habanero, who's sitting just inside there. So let's get to that. All right, the sun's coming out here, and so I have Henry the habanero sitting here, still looking really green, really lush, and really happy altogether. And so what I want to do here is the first step of overwintering this pepper plant, which is digging it up so we can begin the process of moving it indoors. And it's really easy to do that. All that you're going to do is grab something like a hori-hori knife and go about 5 inches from where the main stem is, and then you're just going to dig down to get around the root system that would be in there. Okay, so now that I've loosened up the soil there and kind of cut around it, all I'm going to do is pop underneath and pop it up and out. There we go. Okay, and now that I've got it up here, what I really like to do is I like to get as much of this soil out as possible. So I just give it a gentle kind of tap here right above the roots. Alrighty, we'll take a look. Here is Henry the habanero, and I've got all those roots on there. All the soil has made its way out. And so what we're going to be doing next is moving this into the garage, where I'm going to continue the process of overwintering it by trimming up the root system, pruning back a lot of the growth so it requires less energy out of the gates here, and then get it into some new fresh seedling mix. So let's head over to the garage now. Okay, so Henry the habanero has made it into the garage here, looking really happy. And what we need to do next is essentially step 2 of the overwintering process, which is preparing it for its kind of temporary housing over the course of the winter here. It's like a snowbird that's going somewhere warmer for a couple of months before going back into its natural environment. And so what I want to be doing on that front is, first, I'm just going to take off the fruit right here. And we're going to see if those ripen up inside. And now the next piece that we need to be working through is that we're going to be taking it from the outdoor environment where it was in a very large raised bed, and we're going to be putting it into a much smaller container. This one right here. And so because of that, you know, the roots are already larger than this container. And so what I need to be doing is I first need to prune back some of this root system in order to have it fitting into this new pot, this kind of temporary house that's going to be in. So let's do that now. And all that I'm going to be doing here is taking my pruning shears and just cutting back a decent amount of the root system here. So I'm just going to take the pruning shears and snip right there, giving it a nice little haircut. Okay, so as we can see here, cleaned up the root system really quite nicely, and what we can see is with our pot, we could now pop that in, and that fits in there beautifully. So that's kind of the amount of the roots that you want to take off. Now, because we just removed a good amount of the roots, it's going to be very difficult for this smaller root zone to support all of this plant, all this foliage above. And so what we want to be doing next is removing a significant amount of this foliage. It's going to feel a little bit dramatic, a little bit scary, but trust me on this one, it's going to work out well, and all that foliage is going to come back. Additionally, it actually gives you a really cool opportunity to kind of shape the plant. And so for myself, I like my pepper plants to be a little bit shorter, a little bit more stubby, opposed to growing like really, really long and tall. And this is a great opportunity to then be getting into it and trimming some of the foliage off at key points to promote a kind of shorter and more stubby plant. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to just first kind of remove some of these leaves off the bottom so I can see what I'm working with. Okay, so as we can see here, we've got now the main stem that's coming up, and then it branches into about 3 different stems, and then one of those branches once again into another kind of V or splits into 2. And this is what the pepper plant is going to be doing. And so what I want to be doing actually is taking off a lot of this kind of upper and higher up growth so that the plant is only going to be about 4 to 5 inches long, and that new growth that comes out is going to allow that canopy to continue to spread out in a wider fashion opposed to growing vertically. And so it can be as simple as taking something like this and then just chopping it right down here. And then over on this side, I'm not sure if we're able to see that there, we can see once again there's a nice little node here. So for me, that feels like a really good place to once again prune off a big chunk. So there we have it. That's now been removed. Now over on this side here, what I'm going to do is I can see that we've got a really nice node. This is just a leaf here, and then this is also just a leaf here. But we got this nice node here, and so I'm going to take this side off right around there. Perfect. And then let's continue along. Perfect. So once again, really nice, beautiful node. This is where it's really easy for new growth to come out of, and we're going to pop the top off there. Alrighty, so as we can see here, we have given Henry quite the little haircut here. And now Henry the Habanero is looking all kind of tidied up, but definitely with a lot less foliage and a lot less roots than we had before. Now, one important caveat that I want to make at this point is that if you are not planning to use a Growlight or have your habanero or any of your pepper plants in a well-lit window over the course of the winter, then you would want to remove all foliage growth, because in that instance, you're having it just going dormant before then putting it back into the garden beds. I haven't had as much success with that. Plus, I really enjoy seeing the plant put on all this beautiful foliage growth over the course of the winter time. And so for myself, I always put them underneath grow lights or into something like a window sill. And with that, I can leave a little bit of foliage on there because the plant is going to essentially immediately, once it kind of recovers from the shock that it's just gone through, it's going to go into putting on new foliage growth. Okay, so that brings us into step number 3 here. And for step number 3, what we want to be doing is doing a nice little inspection on Henry the Habanero, and then washing Henry with some water from a hose to get any pests that might be living in there, any critters that could be in there, out before we bring Henry into the indoor space. So to be inspecting, I would first go through the top, and I'd look to see if there are any little bugs, any little aphids, and I would just be squishing those with my fingers. And then after that, you want to go down to the root system and to see if you can spot anything in there. It's going to be more challenging in the root system because it's, be difficult to see, is that dirt or is that some form of a little pest? But nonetheless, just give it a quick look through. And once you've done that and finished that, we're now going to take it quickly outside to just give it a really quick rinse of water to spray anything off and to get that remaining little bits of soil out from there. All right, so let's take a look. And as we can see, I'm gonna try and zoom in on the root system there. And what we can see is that all of that kind of soil that would have been in there has been rinsed out. Any little insects or critters that were either on the roots or on the leaves, they've all been sprayed off as well. Henry is in a really great place to begin moving indoors. And so that brings us to the fourth step here, which is preparing its temporary home. And so all that we're going to be doing for that is using this container, getting Henry in here, but doing so with some seedling mix. Now you could just use a standard potting mix, of course. For ourselves, we love our seedling mix because it's that perfect medium to be growing in, where it's got compost, it's got worm castings, it's got vermiculite, so there's going to be all the kind of nutrients that it needs, some microbes in there, as well as some really nice drainage. If you were to be utilizing a potting mix, I would encourage you to add a little bit of compost in there just to ensure that it has some nutrients available. And it kind of begs the question if we do any additional fertilizing for it, and we don't. And the reason behind that is because there's enough nutrition in our seedling mix, given that we incorporate compost and worm castings into it. So let's go ahead and let's start getting Henry into its temporary housing. So I'm gonna grab a bag of our seedling mix here. I'm gonna fill that up about 2/3 of the way. There we go. Perfect. Now all that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab Henry. I'm gonna actually make a little bit of a little divot or hole here. I'm gonna pop Henry in, get all those roots facing down. Beautiful. And now all that I'm going to do is I'm just going to top it up the rest of the way with seedling mix. Beautiful. So let's move the seedling mix over to the side here and check that out. Looking really, really nice here. Filled up with seedling mix. The last thing that I'm going to be doing before we move it into the indoors there is just giving it a really nice big drink of water here. For those of you that know me, you know that I like to use a turkey baster, just because it allows the water to get in there nice and slowly. It's not like it's like filling up and then you have like a couple inches of water sitting on the top surface, but rather it just gently works its way in there. So it takes an extra minute or two, but for myself, definitely worthwhile. And I'm going to keep on watering it until I start to see some coming out of the bottom here. At that time, I would know that it's really, again, because I'm applying it so slowly, it's really working its way all the way through the seedling mix here. All right, so the table is facing me a little ways. So as we can see, it is now pouring from the bottom, right between my legs, almost hit me, but I avoided it, so we're good. Okay, so what we can see here is that I ended up putting about, 2/3 of this into the plant here, and at no point was it actually even like any water sitting on the top of the surface. And that's why, again, I love the turkey baster so much. So if it's Thanksgiving time, if you're having turkey, if you're using the turkey baster, make sure after that you steal it and bring it down into your kind of gardening and plant space. So this baby is all set here for the winter. It has everything that it needs. It's been cleaned up, it's been pruned up, it's got some nice seedling mix in there with all the nutrients and microbes and drainage that it needs. The last thing that we need to be doing, step number 5, is to move it indoors underneath the grow lights. So we're going to go ahead and do that. But if you've gotten any value, any entertainment, if you're feeling more comfortable and confident with overwintering your pepper plants this coming season, then go ahead and give us a like, a comment down below. That really helps us get in front of new gardeners that may not have yet experienced gardening's mental health benefits, which is exactly what we want to be doing. So let's get this baby into the grow light area. All right, well, there we have it. Henry the habanero has made it inside and is now underneath the grow light, where he's gonna be hanging out for the next kind of like, what is it? October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. So 8 months or so, Henry's just gonna be hanging out under here. And you might be wondering, what do you do over the course of those 8 months? Effectively, not very much. All that I'll essentially be doing is watering Henry every probably like 3 to 4 days with the turkey baster there, just to ensure that there's enough moisture down there to continue to put on that new foliage growth. Depending on how it grows, then I might actually do a couple of haircuts here and there and continue to shape the plant as I like to see it growing. But if you would like for me to do a follow-up video on Henry when we're getting ready to move him back into the garden beds next season, then let me know in the comments, because that's something that I could start kind of planning up and thinking through how to go about doing that over the course of the winter here. Maybe even do a couple of check-ins in that video. And on top of that, I've got Henry's little brother Harvey over here. So here's Harvey the habanero, and Harvey came in a couple of months ago because I wanted to just kind of go through the process, make sure everything was running smoothly. And as we can see, there's tons of beautiful foliage that has been put on there, and even a little habanero that's actually growing indoors here. So Harvey's looking really, really good. I've got no doubt that Henry's going to be there before we know it. Any questions that you do have, go ahead and leave those in the comments. Be more than happy to shed more light on any parts, any steps of the whole process. But I really hope that this has helped you feel more comfortable and more confident with bringing in your pepper plants this coming winter. I can't wait to catch you on the next one. See you then.